Hello, everyone, and welcome to Genealogy Quick Start. I'm Shamele Jordon, producer and host. Have you ever been a census taker? Do you hide when the census takers come by? Well, do you feel that maybe it's a genealogist's duty to be active in this process? We should probably be in charge of it, right? We know what we want to see if we're going to be here 72 years from now, right? Well, probably not. I remember the first obituary that I wrote. My cousin said, "We don't need all of that stuff." So, I just overdid it. And probably if we were census takers, we'd probably overdo it as well. I needed an editor for that obituary. How are you today? Welcome, welcome. Please realize that you can watch us on YouTube, Facebook, and of course, Philly Cam Studios. Today we have two great quick starts. When do we not have great quick starts, right? And we have a great special guest. And the quick starts are going to be one, of course, is dealing with census records, reading between the census lines by reading the rules. You guys know, of course, there's instructions out there. And Michael and Jim, they're going to teach you ways to get deeper into the census by reading those instructions and understanding what's going on. Why are they answering in the way that they are? Also, our very special guest, Tamika Strong, is going to talk about turning timelines into bullseyes. And if you don't know Tamika Strong, once you meet her, you are going to just be in love with her the way that I am, because she is so chock full of knowledge. She's an instructor at the Institute of Genealogy and Historical Research. So I look forward to introducing you to Tamika and during our second quick start. So guess what? It's time to bring out my buddies. First up is Jim Beidler, editor and columnist. Where did he go? Oh, there you are. How are you, Jim? Nice to see you.
Likewise, Shamele.
Also, we have author of Genealogy Tip of the Day. Do you guys have that book? That is an amazing book that just gives you all types of wonderful tips and information. That's actually our show Bible, right? We kind of pull from there for our episodes. Is it there? Is it there? Yes, it is. Genealogy Tip of the Day. So let's bring him out. Michael John Neill.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I have a dog today, and she's been quiet for the last 3 hours until right now.
So, guys, should we be in charge of the whole census thing? Have you guys ever been census takers? Have you ever participated, like had a census taker in your house?
I definitely I remember the 1970 or 1980. I can't remember. One of those two. I remember a census taker coming to the house and going over things. Yep.
So you haven't been. Do you think we should be in charge?
Oh, absolutely.
I don't remember the 1970 census, to be perfectly frank with you. I'm in it. I should be in it, but I don't remember it.
Well, what about like 2020?
I filled it out. I didn't want anybody coming to my door and nosing around, so I answered the questions.
And you filled it out properly, of course. You read the instructions?
I wrote yes, and I wrote in cursive. No, I don't remember. I printed if there were places to print and not fill in bubble circles. It's been, I just don't remember. It was 2 years ago. That's a long time in some ways.
Especially in pandemic years.
Especially pandemic years. Exactly. Yeah. I don't even know how they got it done, right? So you guys have come up with an amazing quick start idea called, is this it? Reading between the census lines. Reading between the census lines by reading the rules. But before we get started, oh my God, I forgot to ask people and see who's here. How dare I not say hello to our guest?
They've already started doing it. They
Please
must know
tell
what
us
you
who you
forgot.
are, where you are, and if you have a genealogy group, please let us know your genealogy group. I want to definitely highlight some groups who are so supportive of this show. And of course, that's AAGG. Dean is here from AAGG, as well as Jean. And Chicago's African American Genealogy Group. They are amazing. And Cleveland's African American Genealogy Group. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So who do we have here? We have Paula Moen from West Deptford. Hello, Paula. Hello, Dean from the Philly area. Denise from the Netherlands. How are you? We have Jean Allen from Collegeville. We have Marquita from Tennessee. Tennessee on Facebook. You guys are really like up there. So thank you for supporting Genealogy Quick Start on Facebook. Hi, Wanda Looney. Wanda was a 2010 and a 2020 census taker in Alabama. Congratulations. Did you get too specific with them? Did you ask some extra questions you might not have needed to ask? Wanda. Hello, Rodney Robinson from California. My cousin's here. Hello, cousin Floyd from AAGG in Philly. Hi, Crystal Reed from Orlando. That's the first we've had in Orlando, I think. Welcome, everyone. So let's go ahead and get started with reading between the census lines by reading the rules. All righty. So let's go to step one, which is pick an enumeration year. All right, so that's the first thing you have to do. And then step two is to transcribe the census. So why do you transcribe the census, and how do you do it, and how do you keep track of all of that?
Well, you use a feather and ink pen to no, you the transcribing the census, from my perspective, is the reason why we transcribe anything. When we do that, we're more likely to notice details that we don't see if we just gloss over and read it silently. And then we've got the text in digital format, which makes it easier to search our electronic documents as well. But noticing things when you transcribe is I think the main reason for doing any transcription work.
Yeah, and there are some things in documents that are maybe the primary reason you're looking at it and so forth. But census especially, there's loads of extra facts. As you go across the whole enumeration schedule, and kind of the point of this is some of them may be, until you read the instructions, may not be completely intuitive why it was answered in a certain way.
Great. Yes, very true. So you want to transcribe it. Are you guys beyond the quill and pen? How are you actually, where do you put this? Do you have like separate files for them? Not to get all granular, but what do you do with where do you put them? How do you save them?
I would save it in each person that's enumerated in their data file in your database. You could probably also copy and paste that into one larger file where you keep all the 1850s for a certain family or all the census entries for one family. So then you could search it, search that text, if you will. But I would also want the individual entries in their data files. But copy and paste works wonders. Once you've typed it, you don't have to type it again. It's not the 1980s, where you have to do that.
And you can get a head start on that, if you're using Ancestry, for instance. A bunch of the stuff will, when you do a search and then you click on one of the search results, it's going to have a whole lot of that there: the people's names, ages, relationships, things like that. and that, as Michael's saying, that's a copy and paste that you haven't even had to keyboard the first time around.
Well, yes, but I will add, you should always double check all of those ancestry transcriptions, double and triple check those. Once in a while, in addition to errors, sometimes the way they key things in the database isn't quite correct. The way they interpret things isn't quite correct either. So,
well, you can get a start. You can get a start. You copy and paste it, and you check it out.
Oh, you can get a start. You might want to put on better shoes, but you can get a running start. Yeah.
All right, so we're transcribing the census, and then step 3 is to find the census instructions. So there's my buddy. Where is the best way to got the thing on top of his head.
Yeah, the best blurring of the camera is going to mess it up a little bit, I think, the way that.
Hi, Neill. That's the grandson.
Yep.
So where do we find how do you get to the census instructions?
Well, was there a link we've got that we can share in the chat? Because all those instructions are online.
Okay.
So there should be a link that we can put in the chat so people can read those. You could even Google 1930 census instructions, and that would come up, or whatever year you need. Just put that census year, census instructions on a Google search, and they will. They're at the National Archives. They're on probably a few other websites as well.
They're the ones that I was looking at. It was somebody who simply made a PDF out of the NARA instructions, and they are quite detailed for every question. I won't say that they anticipated absolutely every possible response, but they did give some pretty specific instructions.
Probably the best place to go is when you do the Google search, census.gov. They're all there in one way, shape, or form on the census.gov site.
Census.gov. Love it. So that's where you can go to see the instructions. So you have the census instructions. Let's move on to step 4, which is to interpret enumeration using the instructions. Is this where we want to show some examples?
Yeah.
All right. So, Jim, I love some of the information you've shared. As soon as I can get my finger to it, I know it's here. Oh, I think I just need to do this.
I'm cueing you here.
I'm trying. I think I lost my present. Let me share my screen again. All right. So I have done some research where I've had some Germans, and I've always wondered why it was different. So talk to us about birthplace.
Yeah. And yes, it's a German example because that's what I do most of the time. And you were dealing with a couple of things here. Okay, 1850, of course, is our first U.S. Census where it asks for data on each individual, and it includes birthplace. Some of the later censuses will eventually ask for not just the birthplace of the individual, but of their mother and father. But 1850, it's just the person's birthplace. And here is an example of enumerators not necessarily following the instructions, because the instructions were just if it was somebody from any of the German states, to just put Germany, but which technically is not correct because there at that point there was no German Empire. There were individual German kingdoms, duchies, principalities, and so forth. And in 1850, you have most German-born people marked as Germany, but some marked as Prussia, some marked as Hesse, and so forth. And they're probably, I'm sure they would do debriefs after the census, and I believe then after 1850, they must have done that because the instructions became very explicit to use the name of the specific German state, and for the mega kingdom of Prussia to use its provinces, because it had like a dozen different provinces. It covered about half of what would become the Second German Empire. So that can be helpful in a couple of ways. That if you only know Germany and you don't know their village of origin from other records, you're kind of sunk. But if you can break it down to just Hesse, to just a province of Prussia, something like that, it at least gets you to funnel down a little bit.
Let's see what they did with the Germans in the 20th century.
Yes. Yeah, 1900, 1910, oops, they're back to Germany, just the generic. But then the effect of the world wars comes into place in various ways from 20 to 50. 1920 was right after World War I, and they're asking for not what the political unit was in 1920, but what it was at the time of birth. So here you can have somebody who they have different birthplaces, and you're throwing up your hands. 1930 was the same thing. Then for 1940, because of the late 1930s changes as Hitler was starting to march across Europe, they're asking for the birthplace as the country or province as it was as of the beginning of 1937. So here you could very well have in 1920 someone born in the German Empire, the eastern part of the German Empire, that then became part of a resurrected Poland. So in 1920 they might be listed as Germany or Posen, Germany. 1930 the same. 1940 then it may be listed as Poland because as of 1937 that area would have been Poland. So, and then 1950 there they go with not as of when you were born, not as of any previous time period, but as right then what was the international boundary in 1950. So it's a complication, and it's definitely a when in doubt, follow the instructions.
So was this was specific? Could we take this same setup and use it for all Europeans, or did they have specific rules based on the country of origin?
They had. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it would be based on the country of origin. For example, the UK is not nearly as complicated, but that too would go whether they used Ireland or the Irish Free State or what have you. That would all go back to the instructions for that appropriate census year. So even my Irish there's a little bit of wiggle there based on whether it's 1870, 1880, or 1900, 1910. And just like it's not as complicated as it is for the Germans for historical reasons, but it still goes back to what were they given for the instructions at that specific census year. Even in French-speaking Canada, there may be some nuances because the instructions change from one enumeration to the other. You want to go back and read the instructions, just as Jim has indicated, but I would remind you that not every census taker followed the instructions, and once in a while your ancestor might not have understood why are they asking about, and he might have just said Germany or Prussia just to get the guy out of his or her hair. But you always want to read the instructions because there were people that did follow them, and there were enumerators that were very conscientious, about seeing that they were followed to the letter of the instructions.
Or ones that were too conscientious, where it's rare, but there are some censuses where they give actual town names in the 1800s, right, which is a real godsend. Yeah.
That's why genealogists should be in charge, because that's what we would do, right?
Exactly.
Help out the future.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Let's
And
look. Go ahead.
I was just going to say also, this whole thing is done most effectively then when you expand it to the whole gamut of the person's lifetime and their censuses, so that any one decade's data, that you don't make a mistake on, because you're going to compare over time. Okay, what their answer, how does that comport with the instructions, and then how might that comport, as Michael was saying, with an enumerator that maybe did, maybe didn't exactly subscribe to those instructions.
All right. You have another example.
Yeah, I pulled
19.
1920 from Bern Township, Berks County, Pennsylvania, starting with line 41. This is on this sheet. This is the only foreign-born family in Bern Township. I mean, now 100 years later, we still in Bern Township don't have that many foreign-born people. But this Board family, they were the only ones on that sheet. And you see, it gives in 1920. It gives birthplaces of the individuals, their mother tongue, their birthplaces and mother tongue of both father and mother, and that gives you a real treasure trove of information. And also in these early 20th century censuses, it asks for year of immigration. They say 1911. It's not always right, but it at least gives you, narrows down a point to be looking for them on passenger arrival lists. So, real buku information on this.
The only foreigners in the township?
Well, on this sheet.
Okay.
Yeah. Because and I don't know, did you put the other one?
I think so.
where it's my house? Yeah. Here, starting with line 3, and I'll admit when I started looking, I'm like, why isn't my mother there? Well, then I realized, bonehead, my mother wasn't born until 1927. The reason she's not there, I know, Michael. but this has my great grandfather Wellington Mockmer, his wife Emma, their son James, my namesake, so he's my great uncle, and my mother's mother, who says she's 18 years old. She was 18 going on 19.
Is that Luella?
Luella Frederick. Yep.
I like the name Luella.
Yeah.
And so, this is the house that you're currently living in? Correct.
Wow. Yep.
It was owned free back in 1920. Free and clear.
Well, they only paid $3,000 for it, so which of course was quite a bit at the time.
And let's see. I think I don't know why I have this here.
That was just the full sheet then. Yeah.
And what do we have here, Michael?
This is an 1880 census enumeration. This is not about the places of birth, but about the occupations or the relationships to the head of the household. Those were also rather specific in the instructions, so you'll want to look at those as well. This individual is listed as a boarder, which means he lived there, got his room and board provided. What it doesn't indicate is he's also their nephew. He is the wife there is his aunt. But that relationship is not given. It's the other relationship that is given. So I guess it makes another, you want to look at those boarder roommate kind of situations in terms of what those words actually mean. And there might have been multiple relationships to someone to the head of the household. Not all of those relationships will be given. This is one good example of that. If we've got the next one from the 19, not sure which one you have next on the order there. Okay, this goes back to 1880. This is a little different kind of thing going on. It's the bottom household that we're focused on, 202 and 203, and effect. She's got her children. She's got a granddaughter and a stepson. She's been married to her second husband for about 3 years at this point. You don't know that from the enumeration. But it's blank. She's the head of the household. And if we go to the next page, which completes her household entry, there's a 65-year-old man listed, and his relationship to the head of the household is blank. And when you read the relationship heading, it says relationship, it says whether wife, daughter, son, servant, boarder, or other. And ironically, Henry's relationship was husband to the head of the household.
What?
He was the husband. And this is a very atypical enumeration because usually you find the husband listed first, especially in 1880, because that's the way it was supposed. I'm not going to say that. That's a joke when I even try to say that. It's very atypical.
That is weird.
What's going on here in a real brief nutshell is that the farm they lived on was the farm she and her previous husband had purchased. It was her property. From other court records, I know she dictated what the boys put on what acreage and ran the whole operation. Henry did not do that. Now, in a lot of families, that's what would happen with husband number 2. That's not what happened here. Ancha still ran a tight ship. And I think that's why Henry is listed that way, because from a functional standpoint, I know he's a man of the house, but from a functional standpoint, what Ancha says goes, because it's her farm.
And the women just got the right to vote, and she's like, "Look."
Well, this is 1880, and these are.
Oh, I thought it was 1920.
Yeah,
sorry.
In their German culture, whichever partner to a relationship brought the property to the relationship, it was theirs to make the major decisions on. Male or female didn't matter. If it was the female, it was hers to make those decisions on, and that's what's going on here.
But I thought maybe he might have had a man cave.
He might have, and I put this up once. I put this up once, and somebody said, "Oh, he must have been ill or had a stroke and was near death." I'm like, no, he lived for 32 more years. He was not, and his obituary talks about how great his health and his memory was. He was not. He was not ill. He was just,
I love that. I've never seen a blank there before, unless it was like the head of the household.
Exactly, which is very atypical. This one is from Chicago. This one's from 1910. It's got rumors and borders in this enumeration.
Yeah, what's that all about?
Well, it depends on whether they have dogs or not. No, the rumors are not. Their meals are not being provided to them, is what's going on with that. It turns out that the second rumor is a daughter of the head of the household.
What?
And so instead of listing her as daughter and son-in-law and grandchild, they're listed as rumors.
Was it the instructions that told them to do this, or was this just an error?
I think it was they were living there, maybe paying some rent, and so the enumerator, maybe Lewis wasn't happy because they were living with him. He said, we don't know a lot of the dynamics. He might have said, "You're paying me rent, blank, 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 blank," whatever words he put after that. So I don't know, but they might have been paying a token rent, and that's why they were listed as rumors, and their biological relationship to the head of the household was not.
On an administration record, they listed my great-grandfather as being dead, and he wasn't dead. They just didn't like him, obviously. They had his kids on there. But they said the dad's dead. He has nothing to do with anything. You have quite an active house today, Michael. So step 4 is just to interpret what you see based off of the instructions, which sometimes they didn't follow the instructions, as we saw. And step 5, do we have a step 5?
Use
this. It says 6. Sorry, I got to fire that assistant. Use clues to do additional research. So we needed additional research to figure out that those rumors were actually
related.
relatives. And he was the man of the house.
Right, exactly. And that's why, like when we mentioned before, transcribing the whole thing, looking at every little snippet, if you don't understand what it's there for, go back and read the instructions, because they will provide you with information about why it was there. And then, if necessary, use that as a springboard to further research the individuals in that enumeration.
All righty. Thank you, guys. Let's go through the steps for reading between the census lines by reading the rules from census.gov. So step 1 is to pick an enumeration year. Step 2 is to transcribe the census. Step 3 is to find the census instructions at census.gov. Step 4, interpret enumeration using the instructions. Step 5 is to repeat with other census years. That's the one I left out. Step 6 is to use the clues to do additional research. Thank you so much for that quick start, and we'll see you soon.
We'll see you on the flip side.
All righty. Give me 1 second to switch to our next quick start. It's coming. Oh, I did it backwards. Give me a second. My fingers aren't working today. All right. Let's get started with our second quick start. Not just me. All righty. Hello and welcome to our second quick start with our extra special guest. I'm so glad she said yes. We have today Tamika Strong. Hello, Tamika.
Hi, Shamele. How are you?
I'm good. It's so nice to have you here. Tamika and I met at the most fabulous Genealogy Institute on the planet, on the planet, IGHR. And Tamika actually was a lecturer last year. Congratulations to you, Tamika. Long overdue.
Thank you.
And so, Tamika, we always ask our special guests to tell us your genealogy origin story. How did you get started, and how did you know that you were hooked?
Well, it all started with a question. I was a reference librarian at the Decatur Library, the main branch of the Cobb County Public Library, and I was doing some research on Black Atlanta. And so I had a moment where I sat there and I thought, what about my Black Atlanta heritage? Because I'm a Grady baby, I'm an Atlanta native, and I didn't know much about my family. And so that's when it all got started. And since then, I have been hooked. I remember having some early interviews with my oldest uncle, Leonard Swinger Jr., who has since passed, as well as my great uncle, Bishop Roy Blake Jr., who has also since passed. And I'm looking at these notes and I'm wishing that I had dated them so I can know exactly when it was that I talked to them about this information or gathered this information from them. But ever since then, I've been hooked. I started a genealogy group following a series of genealogy workshops that I had at the second library where I was working, Wesley Chapel Library. And those series was taught by, several of those classes were taught by Muriel Jackson, who is a well-known genealogy librarian down in Macon. And because of her, as well as my fourth cousin, D.L. Henderson, that's how I really got started and got hooked. So they are the reasons why I am where I am today.
All right, you said something that I've heard before, and I need you. Did you say you was a Grady baby?
Yes, ma'am. I'm a
What
Grady
is
baby.
A Grady baby?
Anyone born at Grady, basically.
And that's a hospital, and where at?
It is a hospital in Atlanta, and it is a mantle of honor for some of us. You know, it's one of the main libraries is a trauma hospital in Atlanta, and you know, anyone who gets hurt, they basically are like, take me to Grady. So Grady is one of our top hospitals in the state.
Grady baby. Okay, I got to ask some of my Georgia, Atlanta family. Are they Grady babies? I don't know about this. All right. So I love your quick start, which is turning timelines into bullseye. So what exactly does that mean?
Well, as a part of my duties here at the Jordon Archives as an archivist, one of the things we do is we assist researchers in their family history research. And so while helping patrons, we're with them, maybe 15 minutes or in some cases several hours. And I was trying to find a way what would help me to help them. And so I thought about um, Dr. Shelley Murphy, who introduced timelines, and I read her article. And I was like, how can I turn this into something that I can utilize on a day-to-day basis? And so what I did was to take the information from the researchers and create what I call the census survey, which essentially is a timeline. But it helps to formulate and focus the research on a particular person or a family so that we can find the information and also use it as a checklist, because the one thing you want to do is you want to find all the census records for that individual or that family. And so that's the purpose of it.
And it also slows them down because they come in and go, blah, 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 blah. They give you all of this stuff and you're like, okay, hold on.
Absolutely.
Have you looked at a census record? What's that? And so this is fantastic. So let's go through this so that maybe, and you could give them this video in the future. You can say, hey, go to like 30 minutes in, and then we can talk. So let's do step one, which is to establish your goal or research question. So generally people will have some kind of goal. Sometimes they just want to know everything, but what type of research questions do you suggest people have, or a goal? How do you, because most of the time they're like, I want to know everything. So how do you focus them on a question?
Well, we focus them on a question by asking them, do they know anyone who lived in 1940 or 1950? So that will be the starting point. And so with the questions that we ask, and I'll even throw out, hey, you need to do this pedigree chart before I can assist you, because it helps me to help them. Because that way I know who's who, because with us sitting there for 15 minutes, to a couple of hours, I get confused and I don't want to share with them, incorrect information. I want to make sure that what I'm sharing with them is correct. And so that's why we use a lot of paper, i.e. the census survey, i.e. the pedigree chart and the family group sheet while we're doing this. And we also want to ask them, what is your goal? What are you planning? What do you want to get out of this?
I have a reunion in 2 months and I need to give everybody what their family tree is.
Absolutely. Then we get those. I want to find out information about my husband's family for Father's Day. I had one of those questions, and just some other things. So we're really excited to assist people, and just in general with my own personal research, the timelines and the goals help us to focus. Because one of the things I've learned in several of the sessions that I've taken is that we need to slow down. I'm a thrill of a hunt type researcher. Give me a name and I'm going to the census records and I'm finding names. But as the previous quick start illustrated, you need to learn the instructions. You need to know more about the census records, because we look at the census and we glance at them and we keep moving.
Yes.
But we really don't digest them and analyze them the way in which we do. We should.
Well, how many times do we go back to the census and say, I didn't even notice that? Let's move on to step two. After you have your goal or question, you want to identify your research subject. And so that's kind of like just focusing in on one person at a time, not everybody, and following the bouncing ball, right?
Absolutely. Because sometimes with genealogy, you can get overwhelmed because the number of people you're researching, it grows exponentially. So where you started with one, you'll have two plus that one, their parents plus them, and then you have the grandparents, the great grands, and this is not counting the children. And sometimes you have to research the children. So you really want to, depending upon whatever level in research you are, if you're a beginner, intermediate, advanced, you really want to identify their research subject.
So pick a person and focus on them at least for a little while, right?
For a little while, right.
All
sometimes those ancestors, they'll come and they'll be nudging you or knocking you upside your head saying, hey, you need to focus on me today. So,
or sometimes we just follow the bouncing ball and we end up with nothing, right?
Yeah, those
so
great
step
shiny objects.
3 is to write down everything you know. Oh my God, get it out of your head, right? So you did exactly that. Let me just add that so we can see. Tell us about your person.
So this is my second great grandmother, Miss Margaret Maggie Harris Pageant Calloway. And so when I write the individuals' names, when I'm looking at doing a summary of them, I try to, especially with the females, write down all of their married names, because that for me is an indicator that says they got married twice. And so what I know about Miss Maggie is that she was born in Morgan County to Eli and Mary Jane Harris. She was married twice in Morgan. She divorced once in Morgan. She had a total of 6 children. She moved to Fulton County and she died in Fulton County. So this is a summary of all the information that I've gleaned from some of the preliminary research that I've done about Miss Maggie Harris. And so this here actually has a lot of clues in it. But some people may not see the clues. Some of the more experienced researchers will see them, but some of the beginners may think, oh, I don't know much about my people. This is, if this is all you know, that still provides a lot of information.
That's plenty. That's great. So just kind of get it out of your head and write it down. So let's move on to step 4, which is to create a census checklist and timeline. So you talk to us about that. What's a census checklist?
So for me, the census checklist is to look at the life range of the individual. And once you get that life range, then you can know what years of the census you should find that person in. And I say should because sometimes it's hard to find.
Yes.
Sometimes they may not have been enumerated. Maybe the name is misspelled. There's a number of reasons why you may not be able to find them right away. But as long as you have this checklist that you can check against the census records that you find, that will help you to know whether or not you found the person, and it can also translate into a to-do list, i.e. a bullseye. And so in this example, it shows that I found her in 1880, 1900, 1910, 20, 30, and 40. And so with this,
great job, Tamika. You found her. It's not that easy all the time.
I'm really excited about that, and the fact that she was actually there. And 1880 is kind of suspect because there's a baby pageant. Baby Harris, but I think it's her. Okay. And so I'm going to claim that it's her until I have more research to say it isn't. But with this census checklist survey, it also helps to put the location. And so you can see that I have Morgan County next to the years that I found her in Morgan County, and Fulton County next to the years where I found her in Fulton. And so this actually creates a migratory path for her. Mm-hmm. So it lets me know she was in Morgan County these years, like 1880 to the 1920s. And then from the 1920s to 1942, she was in Fulton County. So that helps me to know where she is. And where do I need to look for the particular records related to whatever events, i.e. her marriages, her divorce, the birth of her children. Mm-hmm. So if there are records that do exist during that time frame, that helps me know where to go looking for them.
I love this. And talk to us about death. Like usually we get the death certificate and we're just happy and we're out of here, right? You're saying no, right?
The one thing I like about this, and I actually did this step recently with a person I was working with, is to create a checklist under the different events. And so I know that there is a research plan, there's a research log, there is some other documents that you want to create, a research journal. And so for me, I find it hard to keep up with all those different documents. And so what my timeline does, it functions as all of those things. And it may not be the most proper way, but with genealogy, there's so many different ways to do it. Mm-hmm. You do whatever helps you to get the job done for the most part. And if you're trying to go be a professional, that's when you have to adhere to those professional guidelines. But if you're just doing it for yourself, then find what works for you. And this timeline / checklist / census survey works for me. And so under that particular event, I wanted to create a list of records because she's in Fulton County. Mm-hmm. Fulton County provides a lot more records than hence Morgan County, which is a rural county, versus Fulton, which is the where Atlanta is. So it has more resources available, city directories, the African American newspaper, the death records, and some other stuff. So with that, I wanted to create a way to make a list of all the records I should be able to find, in particular, the newspaper death notice, as well as the funeral notice, because the Atlanta Journal-Constitution or the Atlanta Constitution, as it was the day paper, and then the Atlanta Journal was the evening paper, and then they later combined, they always ran, for the most part, if you pay for it, a death notice as well as a funeral notice. And so as genealogists, we don't want to leave any stone unturned. So for me, that includes getting the death certificate, finding that death notice, finding that funeral notice, because we don't know what type of information either one of those resources will provide.
Yes, I love that. You going deep, girl. I love it. I just love things that are just take it out of your head and put it on paper, and that will help you to step 5, use the timeline to identify dates, locations, and repositories. Well, we always talk about the crosshairs on this show, the date and the place, right? Tamika has a triangle. Let's get the triangle, girl. Talk to us about your 3 important factors.
Well, as Shamele said, she, did the crosshairs, and I always think about her with that cross. But then I had to go one step further because I know that it was said, different circles have said that African Americans don't have records. As an archivist, I know that's not really true. Right now, in this day and age, we're in the midst of the technology era, and we're digitizing resources left and right every day. And so it's not only about the date and location. You have to know where to look. So maybe the record is on Family Search. Maybe the record is Ancestry. Maybe the record is still sitting in the state archives. Maybe the record is sitting in the county courthouse. Maybe it's in the county archives. Or maybe it's in a university on the other side of the US. You never know. So you just have to learn the different places where it could possibly be. And so with that, it's an important step to think about, okay, so where would I find this record? And sometimes those records show up like in the most unexpected places, but you have to ask the question. 1, does the record exist? That's based on date and location. 2, if it does exist, where do I go looking for it?
I love it. We're going to do a triangle now. I have to tell Michael and Jim no more with these crosshairs. We got a triangle going on thanks to our special guest. So that's step 5. And you have your Big 10. Okay, let's show Tamika's Big 10. Tell us about this Big 10.
So going back to the idea of where to look. I have this idea of the Big 10, and sometimes this list is decreased, sometimes it increases. But for the most part, we are living in the technological digitization age. So you're going to be looking at Ancestry, Family Search. Those are the 2 big names, and they're digitizing materials all the time. Family Search just finished digitizing much of its microfilm collection. So that's definitely a resource that you have to take a look at. And on top of that, it's free. So you, regardless of where you are, if you have access to the internet, you can access Family Search. And of course, I'm biased with state archives, but the truth of the matter is, whatever state you're researching, you have to start at the state archives, because the state archives in some cases can be a one-stop shop. So instead of driving all over the state of Georgia, you might just have to come down to Morrow, Georgia, to the state archives and see what records we have available.
You guys have the perfect setup with the National Archives next to the state archives. And I think we actually have someone on here from the Georgia State Archives. Hello and welcome. Tamika brought her people out here to be with her. So thank you, Georgia State Archives out in Morrow. And so I love your Big 10. Everyone should take a snapshot of this and remember, like, this is leaving no stone unturned. Jim might be upset you have newspapers at the bottom now.
Well, newspapers were the social media of their time. So it's a resource that we cannot ignore, nor the public libraries. I'm a public librarian also. And well, I was. But the public libraries, they have gems, they have hidden gems. So you have to take a look at the public libraries in your research area, because you never know what's hidden on their website or what's sitting there on the shelf just waiting for you to come and uncover.
You got to look at all the nooks and crannies, right?
Absolutely.
I just spent some time at my public library going through the telephone books. Oh
Hey.
my God, they were so much fun, those telephone books. Um, so, Tamika, I love, love, love this quick start. Let's run through your steps for turning timelines into bullseyes. Step one is you want to establish your goal or research question. Step two, identify a research subject. Step three, write down everything you know, get it out of your head. Step four, create a census checklist and timeline. We should all have these. And step five is to use the timeline to identify the triangle, dates, locations, and repositories. I love your quick start, Tamika. Thank you so much for that. But I found out that someone that we teach with, you are related by marriage. What is this story?
Okay, so in our last session in courthouse records, Dr. Abbott, she was showing some of her documents that she'd uncovered, and she was talking about the story of one of her grandfather's sister's sons who was convicted for murder and went to prison.
Oh, I love
And so,
prisoners.
and so she started showing some of the records that she'd found. And so she had found the information because she didn't know his name. And that was the research goal, to find out his name. And so, of course, once you find out the name, then you go looking for all the records.
Yeah.
And one of the records she pulled up was a marriage record. And that marriage record had my surnames on my dad's side, Ivory, or it's like Ivy and Parham. And I was like, ain't no way. Those two surnames together, it's impossible. And so I saw Warrenton. Warrenton is one of the cities in Warren County, which is one of my ancestral counties. And I looked, and I can't remember. I think it's probably my third or fourth great grandmother and grandfather are the parents of the wife
Wow.
that the person who was convicted of murder later married.
Wow. So he got out eventually, or
He
did
got
they?
clemency. Yeah.
Oh,
They went all the way
okay.
up to the governor. He got pardoned and everything and released from prison. And
So she's supposed to be on here. Dr. Abbott, are you here?
Are you serious?
I
Yeah, serious?
Wait, I think I am, but hold on a second.
Oh my goodness.
I gotta get my camera. I don't know where my camera is.
Oh my
I can't
goodness,
believe
Dr.
you did
Abbott.
this.
Wait a
Dr.
minute.
Debbie.
Wait a minute.
That is so corny, Dr. Debbie.
I don't know where the camera is.
Well, we can hear your voice. Say hello to your
Hi, Tamika.
Hi, Dr. Debbie. I'm totally blown away. This was not a part of the setup for this.
I was supposed to. That's okay. I got something new going on here, so that's why I can't see you.
Okay. Well,
Well,
so good to
Dr.
hear your
Debbie,
voice.
it was very nice for you to join us. I just want to bring back Michael and Jim just so that we can say goodbye to everyone. Where's my buddies? Here you are. Where are you? Where's Michael? Debbie, we got to get this camera situation going on. Guys, thank you so much for your reading between the census lines. Tamika, you had something that in the NGSQ that's recent, September, you said that fits with the show.
Yes. So one of my duties at the archives is to process the periodicals. And of course, when the NGSQ comes across my desk, I have to look in it because all about genealogy, right? And so in the latest edition of the NGSQ, which is September 2022, in the notes and documents section, Tony Burrows has an article entitled "Three Slave Schedules Accurately Report Owners." I've read most of it, and it is definitely a must read for any African American researcher, especially if you're looking at the slave schedules, because it tells you more information about it, and it goes along with what Jim and Michael mentioned about learning the instructions. What did the enumerators have to do? What was the whole point? And so he goes in very deep.
I have never read the instructions for the slave census.
Right.
So
He
I'm
goes into
going
a
to
lot
have
of
to do
detail
that.
about it, so it is
Your
definitely.
cousin Rodney Robinson says hello. And I want to thank everyone, especially you, Tamika, for being on the show. Jim and Michael, as always, you guys are excellent. Everyone have a great rest of your day.
I just wish I had a triangle to be beaten on. So I like your formulation, Tamika.
Thank you.
Told you she was fabulous. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Right.